The siren started while Marjorie Hadlow had both hands in a bowl of flour, and for the space of 3 breaths, she did not move. She listened for the pitch of it, the distant gun thump that told you whether the bombers were coming for the docks at Chatham or had drifted off course. The siren held. The gun thump came a moment later, lower than usual and from the wrong direction. "Mum." Alice was already at the kitchen door in her nightdress. "Mum, the Anderson?" "The Anderson," Marjorie said. "William, William, get up." She heard him before she saw him, bare feet above, the wail of a child not yet woken into the war, and then he was beside her in his pajamas with his rabbit under one arm. She fitted his shoes on him standing and herded them out the back door and down into the Anderson shelter Frank had dug for them in July, before he had gone off to drill with the Home Guard. The shelter smelled of damp sacking. Alice took William onto her lap. Marjorie pulled the door closed. The drone began almost at once high, layered, the slow weight of engines moving up the channel toward London. Below it, nearer, a single engine, climbing and dropping in fits, like a man trying to catch his breath. Then the gun thump again, very close, and a thud out over the orchard that shook flour off her sleeves. "That was near," Alice said. "Not the house. Hold him." They sat through it. The drone passed. The single engine did not. It coughed twice, a third time louder, and then a sound she would think about for the rest of her life, somewhere between tearing canvas and a hand striking the flat of a pond, and after it, nothing at all. 20 minutes to the all clear. Marjorie waited a further 10 and then climbed out into a dawn the colour of an oyster shell. The garden was as it had been, cabbage rows, pear tree, the shed at the bottom where Frank kept his shears and his bicycle. The shed door was ajar by perhaps 4 inches. She knew, with a cold weight settling under her breastbone, that she had closed it the night before. "Stay in the house," she said, without turning her head. "Take William. Make the porridge. Do not come out until I call you." "Mum?" "Do as you're told." Alice took William inside. Marjorie went down the path between the cabbages, wet grass soaking through the slippers she had forgotten she was wearing. She stopped 6 feet from the shed and listened to the small, dragging, half-stifled sound of a person breathing through teeth. She pushed the door with her foot. He was wedged between Frank's bicycle and the wall, half-sitting, one leg straight out in front of him at an angle that was wrong. A leather flying helmet still buckled under his chin, goggles pushed up onto his forehead, a flight suit of a grey blue she had seen in newsreel photographs and would have known anywhere. His face was very white and very young. Across his thigh, the flight suit was torn open along a 6-inch seam, and underneath it was something that did not look like a leg. He raised his hand, not pointing, just holding it up, palm out, and said something she did not understand, and then in English, in an accent she had only ever heard on the wireless. "Please. I am not armed, please." She did not move. "My leg," he said. He had a boy's voice. He had a boy's face, 18 at most, perhaps less. "My leg is broken. I think the bone." "I cannot, please." She heard, up the path, the small bell of Mrs. Tilbury's bicycle. Mrs. Tilbury came every Tuesday for the eggs. Marjorie sold her at 3p the half dozen, and Mrs. Tilbury was the wife of the village constable, and she would be at the kitchen door in 3 minutes. Marjorie closed the shed door very softly. She slid the wooden peg into the hasp and walked back up the path, and met Mrs. Tilbury at the gate with a smile so steady it surprised her. Six, if you've them. That was a bad one. Charlie's gone up to the orchard with the others. Bomb in the top field at Wickendon's. You're 2 all right. They're at their porridge. Good girls, sensible, 6, lovely, Thursday. Marjorie counted out 6 eggs into the wicker. She watched the bicycle wobble away up the lane, and her hands did not shake until it was out of sight, and then they shook so hard she had to set the basket down on the gatepost and wait for them to stop. She went into the house, gave the children their porridge, said she would be in the shed mending a puncture and was on no account to be disturbed. Alice gave her a long, level look. Alice was 9 and had stopped being a child in May along with the boundy boy and said, "Mum, is something?" "Eat your porridge, please." Alice ate her porridge. Marjorie filled a basin from the kettle. She took the cleanest tea towel from the drawer, a half bottle of iodine, the dressmaking scissors from her sewing tin, a heel of yesterday's bread, a chipped enamel cup of milk. She walked back down the path with the tin tray held out in front of her like an offering at a christening, and at the shed door she paused for one breath only and lifted the peg. He had not moved. He had perhaps fainted. His head was against the wall, his eyes closed. She set the tray down, knelt beside him, and said, in a voice she did not entirely recognize as her own, "I am going to look at your leg. Do you understand? His eyes opened. They were grey. Yes. Will you let me? Yes. She cut the flight suit cloth back from the thigh. The wound was bad, a long gash, the leg bent in a way no leg was meant to bend, but the bone had not come through. She poured the iodine into the gash with a hand that surprised her by being steady, and he made a sound between his teeth that was not quite a scream. I am sorry. I have only this. She bound the tea towel around the thigh, straightened the leg as gently as she could against the wall, and when his face changed colour, she stopped and then went on. She gave him the bread. She held the milk cup to his mouth, and he drank it in 3 swallows, and the colour came back a little. What is your name? Klaus. A pause. Klaus Albrecht. Where are you from, Klaus? Bremen. And you flew this aeroplane? I was. A Heinkel. The 111. Bomb aimer. The others I do not know. I jumped. He closed his eyes. I was at school in March. They came to the school. They said the war. His English failed him. He said something in German, very fast and very low, and then in English again. I did not want to come here. I am sorry. How old are you, Klaus? 17. In October, 18. Marjorie sat back on her heels and looked at the boy whose leg she had just bound. She thought of the boundy boy from the village, 20, who had not come back from May. She thought of her son upstairs with his rabbit, 6 years old in his pyjamas. She thought what kind of country took a boy of 17 out of his schoolroom and put him in the nose of a bomber over Kent in the dark, and she felt for the regime that had done it, a hatred so quiet and so complete it was almost a kind of peace. I am going to fetch the constable in the morning, she said. Mr. Tilbury, he is a decent man. He will see you to the camp. They will mend the leg properly. He nodded. He did not weep. Thank you, Mrs. You will not get out of here in the night. No, I cannot stand. No, she said, you cannot. She closed the shed door, slid the peg, went back up the path, and was very nearly sick into the cabbages and did not allow it. She sat at the kitchen table where her bowl of flour was still standing, put her face down onto her forearms, and stayed like that for a count of 100, breathing. The morning passed. She made the children's beds, she fed the hens, she baked the loaf she had been mixing when the siren went, and took half of it down to old Mr. Pavey 2 doors up, because Mr. Pavey was 83 and had no daughter, and on the way back stopped at the post office and bought a stamp she did not need, so that Mrs. Webb behind the counter would not wonder why she had not been in. At noon she went down the path with another cup of milk and a slice of new bread. He was awake. The leg was holding. She asked him about himself, and he said his father was a clerk at the Norddeutsche Lloyd. His mother taught at a girls' school. He had a sister who was 12. Does your mother know where you are? His eyes filled, finally, and he turned his head away. No, I will write, Marjorie said, after the war. If I am here, I will tell her you came down in a kitchen garden in Kent and were not. She could not finish. That I was not killed, he said. That you were not killed. She left him the cup, closed the door, slid the peg. She did not weep until she was inside at the sink, the tap running over her hand so Alice upstairs would not hear, and then she stopped and washed her face in the cold water and went out to put the rinse cup back on the kitchen step. William was at the gate. He was looking down the path toward the shed. Mum, there's a man in the shed. For a moment she could not speak. Mum, I saw. He looked out the bit. The bit was a knothole in the shed door at the height of a child's eye. Marjorie knelt in the wet grass and took her son's small face between her 2 flour-dusted hands. William, listen to me. There is a man in the shed. He is hurt. He came down out of the sky last night. William's eyes went round. He is a German boy, William. Older than you, younger than the soldiers. He is hurt very badly and he is frightened. Mr. Tilbury will come for him at first light and take him to a place where they will mend his leg. Until then, you will not go near the shed. You will not tell Alice. You will not tell anyone. Do you understand? Will they shoot him? No. Prisoners in this country are not shot. They will mend his leg. William looked at her for a long, considering moment, the way he had begun to look at her since the spring, and nodded once. Can I see him? No. He is frightened, and he does not need a small boy looking at him. Promise me. I promise. She kissed the top of his head, took him inside, gave him bread and the last of the strawberry jam from the jar she had been saving for a Sunday tea that would now not come. When Alice came down at 4 to ask why she was sitting at the table doing nothing, she said she had a headache and would lie down half an hour, and Alice was to listen for William. She did not lie down. She went out to the shed at dusk, with a blanket and another cup of milk. He was asleep. She covered him, and he did not wake. She closed the door and slid the peg and went up the path in the falling dark, and thought, with a clarity that was almost peaceful, that she had not been afraid all day. She had been busy. She slept 3 hours. At 4, she was up. She lit the kitchen lamp and wrote a short note on a scrap of paper from Frank's desk. Mr. Tilbury, there is a wounded German airman in my garden shed. He came down in the raid last night. He's a boy of 17. His leg is broken. He is not armed. Please come at first light. He must be taken in properly. Marjorie Hadlow. She folded it into an envelope and walked, in her coat and real shoes this time, the 300 yards to the constable's house behind the church and pushed it through Mr. Tilbury's letterbox. The dawn was beginning. She made tea, went down to the shed, unbolted the door, and sat on the floor beside the boy with the chipped enamel cup until he woke. Today, Klaus. Yes. Mr. Tilbury will come in half an hour. I have given him a note. He is a good man. He has a son in the Navy. He will know how to do it. The boy looked at her. He said, in a voice that had been an Oberschuler's voice 3 months ago and was something else now, Why? Why what, Klaus? Why are you? Why am I not? She thought about how to answer him. She said, at last, because you are 17 years old and you did not choose, and my son is 6. And because I would like to be able to tell him, when he is your age, what I did when there was a frightened boy in my shed. The boy began to cry. He cried very quietly, not covering his face. She did not touch him. She sat beside him on the wooden floor of Frank's shed in the dawn light coming through the knothole, and she waited. Mr. Tilbury came at 5:20 on his bicycle with another man whose name Marjorie did not know, and a third who had been a stretcher-bearer in the last war and was now in the ARP, a stretcher between them. Mr. Tilbury read the note in her kitchen and looked at her once over the top of it and said, You did right, Marjorie. Where? The shed. Frank, no. Frank does not know. Frank will know tonight. Right. He put his cap on. Stay here, if you like. I will come down. She came down. She stood at the door of the shed while the 3 men got Klaus Albrecht onto the stretcher with a care that did not surprise her in Mr. Tilbury, who had buried 2 of his own brothers in France in 1916. The boy looked at her once as they lifted him out. She put her hand briefly on his shoulder and said, in front of all 3 men, he is 17. His mother is a schoolteacher in Bremen. His name is Klaus Albrecht. I have bound the leg as well as I could. You did very well, said the stretcher-bearer. Better than most would. You may have saved the leg. He is very young. They all are, missus, on both sides. They all are. They carried him up the path. Mr. Tilbury came back from the gate. There will be a man from the Air Ministry, Marjorie. It is the form. I know. And the village. There will be talk. There will be talk. What you did was right. I will say so to anyone who asks. I will say so to Frank tonight when he comes off duty. Thank you, Mr. Tilbury. He touched the brim of his cap and went up the path after the stretcher. William was at the kitchen window when she came back inside, his nose against the glass, his rabbit under his arm. He watched the men go up the lane until they were past the church, and then he turned and looked at his mother. Marjorie sat down on the kitchen chair and held out her arms, and her son climbed into her lap and put his head against her shoulder. Mum, who was that? She thought about it. She thought about all the answers she could give him and how each would shape what he would believe about his country and about what people did to each other in a war, and she chose her answer with the same care she had used choosing the cleanest tea towel from the drawer. That was a frightened boy. William, she said, like you will never have to be, because of what your father is doing at the village hall tonight and what the airmen are doing over the channel and what I did in the garden this morning. He was a frightened boy and we did not hurt him. That is who we are. That is what your mother is. Do you remember it? William considered this for a long time, in the way he had. Yes, he said. She held him there until Alice came down for the porridge, and then she got up and made it, and outside the sun came up properly over the orchard and the empty shed at the bottom of the garden, and the war went on, and Marjorie Hadlow, 38, of the cottage at the end of Crundle Lane, put the kettle on for the second time that morning and did not, in the end, mention to her daughter what had happened in the night.